Okay, hello everyone. I am Mojado and I will be discussing the nature of approaches and methods in language teaching when it comes to community language learning. A community is a group of people who share common interests, values, or goals and interact with one another within a specific setting. A community consists of people, a group of people that shares a common interest, values, practices, beliefs, or goals in a specific group of people or specific setting. Okay, so our learning objectives at the end of the lesson, you should be able to identify the approaches and methods in community language learning, as well as show appreciation regarding the impact of community in the student's language learning. Okay, so I want you to say something about the picture. Okay, very good. The picture depicts a collaboration. The picture depicts a discussion. The picture depicts a communication. Okay, so how can the community help the learners in language learning? Okay, very good. So community is one of the aspects or one of the ways on how the learners learn the language, because I believe or we believe that a learner or even those children tend to imitate others, tend to imitate the things or the language or the voices that they hear po sa ating komunidad. Therefore, as an adult, we should play a positive role for them to learn the positive way when it comes to the language. Okay, so community language learning, or this is what we call CLL approach in language teaching. Community language learning is a humanistic approach to language teaching that emphasizes collaboration, emotional security, and a learner-centered instruction. Okay, take note that community language learning, or CLL, this is a student-centered instruction. So we need to say that the student should be the center of the discussion. As a teacher or a facilitator, we should be the facilitator of the discussion. Okay, we are going to help the learners or help the students if they need our help. Okay, so we should also emphasize the collaboration, because we believe that the students tend to learn when it comes to collaboration, communication, interaction, socialization with other people. Okay, so because we believe that no man is an island, so we need other people to learn. Charles A. Curran, the developer of this approach in the 1970s and based on the psychological counseling techniques. Okay, take note that the developer of this community language learning was Charles A. Curran. Okay. So the method is rooted in the idea that learning occurs based in a supportive and non-threatening community where students feel safe to express themselves. Take note that we, as an adult or a teacher, are going to treat the learners with non-threatening community. Feel them the safest place to learn the language or another language or a target language. Okay, so approaches in community language learning. So we have here 4 approaches. Psychological basis, humanistic perspective, social interaction, and cognitive development. Okay, so let's proceed to psychological basis. Okay, so inspired by counseling learning. Take note, psychological basis, this is inspired with how the psychologists do their counseling with those patients. In a classroom setting, we should treat our learners as a client in counseling. And by that, it can be reduce the anxiety and creating a supportive environment by allowing the students to express themselves freely. Okay, they become more comfortable using the target language. When we say target language, this is another language that they need to learn. Learners feel part of a community which foster a positive attitude towards language learning. As what Mick mentioned earlier, we as a teacher should play a role which is a positive model. So we need to say we are going to use the language in a positive way. That's why, in that way, the learners will learn the language in a positive way. But okay, so the advantages of the psychological basis. We have here reduced anxiety and fear of mistake, increase motivation and confidence, encourage peer support and collaboration, support natural and holistic learning. Because, as what we mentioned earlier, we should employ a positive environment. By that, the advantage of that, the anxiety of the learners or the fear of mistake of the learner will be reduced. And also, by that, by employing a positive learning, the motivations will increase, as well as the self-confidence of the students. In the collaboration part of the advantage, the students, due to the increase of motivation and confidence, they tend to communicate with others through collaboration. Okay, so in a support natural and holistic learning, we should teach the learners in a natural setting. Okay, so for disadvantage, dependence on the teacher at early stage, time-consuming process, limited effectiveness for larger group, may not suit all learning styles. In this part, the learners do not have much idea about the target language that they need to learn, the teacher should be the one to facilitate the learners to give the instruction as well as to teach them on how to use the target language or how to speak the target language. And this is a time-consuming process because the teacher needs to teach the students or help the students if they need our help po. Okay, limited effectiveness for larger group because as what we mentioned earlier, this is a psychological basis, or meaning to say this is tend to be one-on-one the teacher or the students process. Okay, may not suit all learning styles because we believe that a few of the learners are visual learners. They tend to learn more in an audio form, or they tend to learn more in a observation. There are different types of students when it comes to learning styles. Okay, so now let's proceed to humanistic perspective. Okay, in this part, the teacher acts as a facilitator rather than authoritative figure, fostering a sense of community and mutual support. Take note that a community language learning is a learner-centered instruction, meaning to say that we as a teacher needs to be the facilitator only, not the authoritative figure. We are not allowed to center ourselves in the discussion. This approach values the whole person, recognizing that language learning is not just about memorizing rules, including grammar, but also about emotions, relationships, and self-confidence. Take note that a humanistic perspective, this is not about the grammar, how the sentence work, what's the sentence structure, or the spelling or the pronunciation, the target language, because this will focus on the emotions, the relationships, and the self-confidence or motivation of the learners. Okay, these are the advantages of the humanistic perspective. Reduce anxiety and fear of mistakes. Same with the first approach earlier. Increase motivation and confidence by that. By prioritizing the emotions, relationships, and self-confidence. By that, the motivations will increase as well as the self-confidence. Develop social and emotional skills because we are employing the collaboration or the communication or interaction with one another. Encourages natural and communicative language use. So let's proceed to these advantages of the humanistic perspective. And it can be a slow and less structured since we are not focusing on the structure, the grammar of the sentence, meaning to say the less structure, meaning to say it can be slow and less structured. Heavy reliance on the teacher at the beginning since we as the facilitator need to facilitate those children who needs our help. Not deal with the large classes and not suit for all learning styles. What we mentioned earlier, there are different types of learners who learn best in their best way. Let's proceed to social interaction. When we say social interaction, it consists of interaction with one another. Okay, language learning is seen as a social process where learners work together rather than competing. It emphasizes collaborative learning, group support, and meaningful communication. Take note that a social interaction will not focus on the competing aspect. We should focus on the positive way, the collaboration, eliminating those competitions. So it emphasizes the collaboration, interaction with one another. It can be inside the classroom or in the family, communication. Okay, those are the advantages. What we mentioned earlier, reduce anxiety and builds confidence, develops real-world communication because they are communicating with other people. Because by that, in a communication with other people, we can learn experiences with other people. So meaning to say, we can develop a real-world communication skills. Okay, encourage peer learning and collaboration. Okay, so we mentioned earlier, it will focus on the collaboration. Enhances motivation and engagement. And next, support cognitive development. Okay, so let's proceed to this advantage. It has an unequal participation since there are students who are less participative, meaning to say, for those active learners, they tend to learn more rather than those learners who are not participative. Okay, risk of error being reinforced, less structure compared to traditional methods. The traditional method is a teacher-centered instruction. Okay, so challenging for large classes and cultural and personality differences since we believe that we are different with each other when it comes to the culture, the beliefs, the practices, the behavior. Let's proceed to cognitive development. When I say cognitive development, this will focus on the critical thinking of the students. Okay, so engaging others in a meaningful communication, problem solving, and memory enhancing techniques. Okay, so these are the advantages of the cognitive development. Enhances critical thinking and problem solving. It will be focusing on the critical thinking and problem solving aspect of the students and support memory retention through meaningful context, encourages self-reflection and metacognitive, foster social cognitive growth, and reduce cognitive load by providing scaffold. So when we say scaffold, this is a step-by-step process to reach to the mastery level of the language. Let's proceed to disadvantage. Slower progress in language accuracy. Heavily cognitive load for beginners since learners who are not very familiar with the target language, they tend to learn much more slower than those learners who knows something with the target language. Okay, dependence on the teacher and peer in early stages, and unequal cognitive development among learners because there are cases of learning by that in a learner. Okay, difficult to measure progress. Okay, so now let's proceed to methods in cognitive language learning. We have here circle format, recording and repetition, student-led interaction, gradual independence, and reflection and feedback. Okay, so circle format. Students sit in a circle where the teacher or the knower is outside of the circle. This presents a non-hierarchical learning environment. Okay, so the students will form a circle and the teacher will be outside the circle to avoid teacher-centered instruction. Okay, for example, example in a scenario. Okay, so the target language that the students need to learn is the Spanish language. Okay, mother tongue will be English, for example. So, okay, the student wants to say, I like playing soccer. And then the student do not know what's the translation or what's the language of the Spanish in this particular sentence. Okay, so the student will whisper to the teacher and ask what would be the translation of I like playing soccer. Okay, so the teacher will respond with a Spanish language or Spanish sentence with Me gusta jugar al fútbol, and then the student will repeat or say the sentence aloud in the circle. And by that, another student asks, "Where do you play soccer?" The first student asks the teacher for help, receive the translation, and replies aloud. Okay, so in this part, the teacher will be the translator of the language, and the conversation continues naturally with students helping each other. This is an example of a circle format where the students will sit in a circle. Now, let's proceed to student-led interaction. Learners initiate conversation with their natural language. Teacher translate into a target language. Okay, in this part, the teacher is the translator of the language. For example, the target language will be Spanish, and then their mother tongue is English. Okay, in this part, the students sit in a circle, but they will try to speak in Spanish. They will try to speak in Spanish, helping each other within the group. But if the student will not, pag ang estudyante po ay hindi na po alam kung ano talaga ang kanilang o ano talaga ang pronunciation or translation of a particular sentence, doon na po tayo as a teacher facilitate po sa kanila. The teacher only provides, as I mentioned earlier, the teacher only provides translations when needed, allowing students to stay in control. Recording and repetition. So in this part, the teacher will record the conversation of the students or the learners. Conversation are recorded and replayed and analyzed for analyzation purposes. And for example, in a classroom, okay, the teacher let the students do their conversation, introducing themselves and talking about their hobbies in English language, and recorded the conversation. The activity process, there will be a recorded audio for that. Students listen to their own voice and reflect on pronunciation, fluency, and sentence structure. They are going to analyze if the pronunciation is correct or not, as well as the fluency and sentence structure. Okay, so the teacher pauses a key points, encouraging students to repeat phrases correctly and improve pronunciation. By that, the learners will improve their pronunciation and correctly say the word in English. Okay, for example, if a student mispronounced guitar, the teacher models a correct pronunciation and the class will repeat it together. Okay, so next, let's proceed to gradual independence. Over time, students gain confidence and rely less on the teacher's translation. Okay, so this gradual independence, there is a process. First will be the full teacher support or the independence stage. Okay, this is the stage that needs the teacher's full support in the translation. Kailangan pa natin po si teacher in this part of the gradual independence. Now, the next step will be reduce teacher support or semi-independent stage. Okay, this is the stage where the learners are trying to form sentences on their own. The less participation or less intervention of the teacher. Okay, next, independent communication. Okay, so the students initiate and sustain conversation without the teacher intervention. In this part, we as a teacher are just be the observer of the activity. Okay, next, don't forget to always include the reflection and feedback. Okay, so next, okay, this is applicable to all, the reflection and feedback. After each session, students discuss the learning experiences and emotion, reinforcing self-awareness and motivation. Okay, so then examples of reflections and feedback questions. So reflection and feedback after the session, the student will share their own experiences, their own understanding, their own feelings of the entire activity. Okay, the session, the students share what words they learned in the target language, what was easy or difficult in learning language, okay, how confident they felt speaking. Okay, to wrap up the discussion, community language learning is an innovative and holistic approach to language teaching that prioritizes emotional security. We're going to take note that we are going to employ a positive learning for the learners and collaboration, communication with one another within the school, within the classroom, within their classmates, or within their family. Okay, and students' autonomy. While it has a limitation in terms of structure and teacher dependency. Okay, so it remains an effective method for building fluency, confidence, and social connection in language learners. Okay, take note because it always employs the collaboration. And by that, because of the recorded and repetition, the building of fluency, correct pronunciation will be improved. The confidence because of the social interaction and social connection in language learners. Okay, so these are the references of my report, and that's all. Thank you.